afternoon. Today we are working on math packet number 5 video. It is due that Tuesday before Christmas break on December 19th. If you turn it in before that Friday before, you will be able to make corrections to any mistakes you have. So it's always a good thing to turn it in early so we can try to get 100% on our math packet. So our first page says Les, Quinn, Sherry, and Nate shared a box of pencils equally. Quinn then shared all the pencils he got equally with 5 other friends. If Quinn and each of his friends got 3 pencils, how many pencils were in the box? So there most surely is a way to do this all mathy math way. But when I come to word problems, my brain just divides it up into a picture, and it helps me know exactly what to do. So I'm going to look at that box of pencils. And I'm going to say, okay, it was divided up by 4 people. So I'm going to divide my pencil box up by 4 people. So we have Quinn, Les, Sherry, and Nate. Quinn then shares all of his pencils equally with 5 other friends. So if it's Quinn and 5 friends, I'm going to be dividing it up into 6. Because there's Quinn and 5 friends are 6 people. If Quinn and each of his friends got 3 pencils each, so each of these little sections are 3 pencils, how many pencils were in the entire box? So for Quinn's share, I know he had 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 pencils. So if one share was 18 pencils, and there are 4 equal shares, I know what math I have to do to see what the full amount was. So if one share is 18 and I have 4 equal shares, I should be able to figure out how many there was total. So you can either add all 4 shares or you can multiply by 4. Our next page. Hannah gave Jane, this is a tricky one. So Hannah gave Jane as many books as Jane already had. Jane received these books. When Jane received these books, she asked Hannah how many books she had left. Jane then gave this number of books back to Hannah. Hannah then gave Jane back as many books as Jane had left. This left Hannah without any books and Jane with 80 books. How many books did Hannah and Jane have to begin with? So we have Hannah and we have Jane. Our answer is going to tell me how many books Hannah started with and how many books Jane started with. It says work backwards. So I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to say, let's see, Hannah had 0 books and Jane had 80 books at the end. I want to know what they start with, so I'm going to work backwards. So Hannah, I know that this left Hannah without any books. She had 0, Jane has 80. So our next section said Hannah then gave Jane back as many books as Jane had left. So Jane's books doubled. So Jane had some books, Hannah gave her books, and now Jane has 80. So Jane must have had 40, right? If Jane had 40 and Hannah gave her 40, she would end up with 80. So if Jane had 40, Hannah must have had 40, because we have 80 books total. So no matter what, between Hannah and Jane, you add them together, it's going to equal 80. So now, it says Jane then gave this number of books. Let's go back. When Jane received these books, she asked Hannah how many books she had left. Jane then gave this number of books back to Hannah. So if Hannah ends up with 40, her amount before that was just doubled when Jane gave back to Hannah. So if Hannah ended up with 40 and Jane had doubled her books, she had to have started with 20, right? Because if Jane had given Hannah how many books she had left, and she ended up with 40, so she had to have had 20 at that time. So how much did Jane have? If when she gave her 20 books away, she ended with 40. So she had to have had 60 because she gave 20 books. When she gives 20 books to Hannah, because Hannah had 20, Jane gives to Hannah, Hannah gets 40. So we have to subtract that from Jane. So now we go to our very first one. Hannah gave Jane as many books as Jane already had. So if Jane ends up with 60 and it was doubled to get to 60, write down how many books Jane had to start. If we doubled it and she got 60, then figure out how many books it was that Hannah started with before she doubled it, before she gave to Jane. So I'm leaving that last step for you to figure out. Remember, when you add Hannah and Jane together, it equals 80. So if Jane's gets doubled to be 60, that's going to tell you how much Jane has. So you should be able to figure out how much Hannah has if there's 80 books all together. I am going through these quickly on the video. If you still have questions after writing it all out, following the video, that's when you come see me later and we go over it one-on-one. But when I make the videos, we're just going through kind of quick, giving us ideas. 5-card challenge. We need to use these 5 cards. Use different operations to equal number 10. Remember the challenge that's been thrown out to you is to see if you could get 150 points. See if you can beat the high standing 5-card challenge. All right. Now, Mr. Schultz, in his infinite wisdom, is giving you a little Christmas present because this pattern page is probably one of the easiest I've seen. So, complete the entire table. How many blue squares in the first figure? How many red?
12.
How many blue in the second figure?
6.
How many red?
14.
How many blue in the third?
9.
9. How many red?
16.
How many blue in the fourth?
12.
How many red?
18.
Oh my goodness, you can add those up to get your total blocks. And I sure hope we are able to follow our skip counting for each of these to finish up our patterns. 3, 6, 9, 12, 12, 14, 16, 18, 5, 15, 20, 25, 30. You should be able to follow those skip counting patterns. Next page. All right, perimeter is the outside area. So you got to figure out what all of the outside area spaces are, add them together. The rectangle part of this is easy. We've got 2 sides plus that bottom. So that part you should be able to get. Half a circle. So what we need to know to find the area of a circle, remember, sorry, not area, the circumference, not perimeter. Circumference of a circle. Remember, it's either pi times the diameter or 2 times pi times r. If you can figure out the diameter, you can figure out what the circumference of this is, but it is a semicircle, half a circle, so we need to divide by 2. Then you add your circumference with the perimeter of the rectangle, and that's how we get our perimeter. Area. To find the area of our rectangle, length times width. Then we have to add that to half the area of the circle because it's a semicircle. So to find the area of a circle, remember that is pi r squared. So you need to find out what the radius is. So you already found out the diameter for the circumference. Divide that in half. Find the area of the circle, divide it in half because it's a semicircle. Add the circle with the rectangle to get the area of this figure. All right, next page. I wrote this formula down for us the other day, but it's going to go in the video so we can refer back to it. We need to draw the net and label the net, just like we have the net on that back cabinet. So if we have our net and we label our radius for both circles, and we know our height is 40, helping us out here by giving us the actual net width measurements. Remember, our formula is a big, long one for the surface area of a cylinder. 2 times pi times the radius times the height plus 2 times pi times that radius squared. So this first section is the radius of the bulk of our cylinder. The second section is our circle times 2 because we have 2 circles. So you have to figure out the math for both of those, add them together. So do your multiplying, add the 2 parts together, and that will give you your surface area. So if you didn't get a chance to write it all down now, that's okay. You can watch the video later, pause it, and get it all written down. Our next page, we need the volume of a cylinder. This is the first time we're doing volume of cylinder. So we need this formula, pi r squared, that is the bottom of the cylinder, that circle, times it by the height. So then you need to write out the calculation, put the numbers in for the radius and the height, and then you need to actually do the math. Multiply pi times the radius squared times the height. Pre algebra says 300 milliliters of water will fill the cylinder to 50%. How much water is needed to fill the cylinder to 7/8 full? So with me, because I like to look at my pictures, I said, okay, if we're going 7/8, that means I'm dividing my cylinder up into 8. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 8 sections. Halfway, 1, 2, 3, 4. Halfway full, I know, is 300 milliliters. That is 4 sections. From that, I can figure out how much there would be in one section, right? If I go down to that unit rate of 1 section, how do I then get up to 7/8? If I have 7 sections, if I can figure out what 1 section is, I can figure out how many 7 sections would be. Our next page is Pascal's triangle. Each of these triangles, we have to do what the rule is. Multiples of 2, multiples of 3, multiples of 4, multiples of 5. Some people are saying, oh, when it gets down to the bottom and the numbers are really small, it's hard to know what they are. Look at the 2 numbers above, add them together, and it'll give you the number below. When I did this, it really helped to remember what the rules are for multiples of 3. If something is divisible by 2, we know it's an even number. If something is divisible by 3 or a multiple of 3, you add the digits.
Interruption. Will Natalie Raymond please stop down to the office? Natalie Raymond, please stop down to the office. Thank you.
Add the digits of your number together. If that is divisible by 3, you know it's a multiple of 3. Multiples of 4, you can divide it by 2, divide it by 2 again. Then it's a multiple of 4. If you can divide it by 2 times, it's a multiple of 4. Multiples of 5, we know, end in a 5 or a 0. That's the easy one. The 2 and the 5 are easy ones. The 3 and the 4, you have to think those ones through. So shade in any numbers that follow the rule for that triangle. This one, percentages. There was a total of 400 sales. Calculate how many sales each person had. Round the number to the nearest whole. So rounding to the nearest whole. So first thing I did was I looked to see Dodsworth was 27%. The Suyama is 24%. Fuller is 20%. Peacock was 19%. Leverling is 4%. Callahan is 3%. And Buchanan is 3%. Remember our percentages. Part equals percent times the whole. So we're trying to find the part. You know the percentage. So fill in that percentage, and we know the whole is 400. Total of 400 sales. So multiply the percent by that whole, and we go over there. Last page is our polynomial page. We know how to do those. So, we know how to do those ones. And with that, we are done. If you still have questions on the packet, come see me. Have a wonderful day.